Good afternoon, Year 9 and 10. We are so nearly at the end. We have 3 weeks, including this week, until the summer, and I'm assuming you're all as desperate as I am to stop having to do work. We're nearly there. This week's video is looking at a topic very close to my heart, which is special effects in film and theatre. But I do want to start by quickly recapping 3 terms we looked at last week with sound. So, sound effects recap. Number 1, we had the underscore, which, as you remember, is music played quietly while the acting is still going on. And you looked at the video of Jaws, where there was some lovely underscoring of music there. We then looked at diegetic, which is sounds that come from the story that the characters create and they can hear it. Things like footsteps, or doors creaking, or birds tweeting. The characters are aware of diegetic noises. What they're not aware of, they can't hear, is non-diegetic noises. So sounds that do not come from the story, the world, and that the characters cannot hear. For example, the creepy dramatic music in horror films in the background, which is intended to make the audience feel tense. I have got to admit something, which I'm very embarrassed about, which is that last week, I completely misspelled diegetic, not only in the video, but in all of the feedback I gave you. And I had it with an A, it's actually with an E. Naughtiness then, I'm very sorry. From now on, I'm going to spell it correctly, and I hope you can remember to do the same. Right, special effects, a topic I absolutely love. I'm going to put up some pictures, and those pictures are some behind the scenes images of special effects from films. I'm not going to say anything, I'm just going to let you have a little look at them for a minute. Now, some people find it quite disappointing to see a scene they love as it was actually made. I know that at the bottom you can see Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones, and on the right you can see her dragon. On the left you can see what she actually filmed it with, and it does lose a little bit of its impact, doesn't it? Now, the reason it's green is because that's called green screen, and I'm not technical enough to know why it's got to be green, but the green screen, the computer can pick up that and completely change it to something different. Or in the case of the video at the top, with the guys holding the actors from The Matrix, you can get rid of those, so it looks like those 2 characters are flying. Now, we see these in pretty much every movie, don't we? Even movies that you might not realise it have these kind of special effects. For now, though, what actually is the definition? Because I wasn't completely certain when I read this, and I've done some research recently. So, the official definition is that special effects are illusions or visual tricks used in the theatre, film, television, video game, and simulator industries to simulate the imagined events in a story or virtual world. You might have also heard of them be called SFX, SPFX, F/X, or simply FX. And I'm sure you can think of at least one thing of those categories that you've seen, even if it's that you play a video game. So special effects are everywhere now. And like I said before, they fall into 2 categories. Category 1 is mechanical, and that has the following criteria. So mechanical effects can also be called practical or physical effects. That name gives you a clue, and they happen during the live action shooting. They're not added in afterwards. They are actual practical effects that are there with the actors as it's being filmed. And they include mechanical props, scenery, using scale models, using animatronics, which is kind of like robots, and of course pyrotechnics, which is fire or blowing things up. But it also includes makeup and prosthetic makeup. Optical effects, on the other hand, can also be called visual or photographic effects. And those are where images and films and effects are created photographically, so that means afterwards. Sometimes it can be done through the camera, for example, using a filter or multiple exposure or slow motion, something like that. But most often it is done in post-production, which is where they have all these computer programs where they can create effects, and that includes CGI. Basically, it is the difference between having an actual animatronic shark that the actors interact with, or using a computer to create a shark afterwards. Now, looking at these two pictures, I'm sure every single one of us will agree that the shark on the right from the Meg looks better. But think back to the clip you watched of Jaws last week. Think how realistic that shark looked. Because the shark on the screen on the left is that shark. Another classic example would be Jurassic Park. In the first Jurassic Park film, and you'll see a clip of that in a minute, where the giant dinosaur, I think it's a Stegosaurus, is walking, that was animatronic. That was there. Not that big, but they created one. And actually, most people agree that that one looked better than the CGI ones from the most recent Jurassic World films. So there's arguments for both of these effects. So what you're going to do right now is go to the link in the description below, and you're going to watch a video. Now, this video looks like it's about a man talking. He actually talks for less than 1 minute, and the last sort of 8 or 9 minutes are just clips of different films and different special effects. And I want you to think about what effects stood out to you. Okay, so you're going to the description in my YouTube video, for example there. You're going down to the bottom there will be a link. You right-click it, press the thing that says open in new tab, and you watch this. And like I said, it shows clips from different films and explains a bit about how they did it and what awards they won. Okay? And then once you've watched that, I want you to come back here, please. Okay, hopefully you really enjoyed that video, but hang on a second. Where was theatre in that video? Because we looked at a definition at the start, and we know that that definition includes the word theatre. So why did that video that showed all the amazing special effects completely ignore all the amazing work that happens in the theatre? I don't know the answer, so I'm going to talk you through it now. Okay, so there are loads of amazing techniques here. I'm just trying to give you a few ideas of the ways that special effects people in the industry, in theatres, try and create and make scenes as exciting and realistic as possible. So we're going to go through a list. We're going to start off with something called a drop bag, also known as a snow tumbler. Now that looks like that. And what happens is that gets rolled about and it's got something inside that they want on the stage and it falls out in bits to give the effect. So in this case, it's snow. They could use it with rain or something else falling as well. We've also got flying rigs. Rig is another word for like almost a mechanical machine. And in this case, this is one that the actor would be attached to and it would be raised. And that can make it look like the characters are flying. And if you light it properly, you don't even have to see the strings. Sometimes if it's really clever, the wires that are on them, you can't even notice. And what I'm going to show you now quickly is a flying rig being used in action in the Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark musical that was in Broadway a few years ago. I mean, that's just amazing, isn't it? Imagine the amount of training that those actors have to go to be able to do that kind of aerial choreography. Absolutely amazing. We then move on to pyrotechnics and fire. I can't actually believe that the next two pictures I'm about to show you are real on the theatre. We've got that one. How amazing does that look? And then that one. Like that looks like an actual image from like some kind of jungle or cave fire, doesn't it? Now, this one, the bottom one, is fake. This company sells different lengths that you can buy of like a light and almost like a wind machine with fabric that moves, and it makes it look like a fire. The one on the left is so realistic, I think might actually be a fire. Now, they do have actual fires on stage in theatres, and it needs a lot of safety rules, understandably. And a video you're going to watch in a minute briefly talks about that. Companies also sell forms like this if you need a campfire or torchlight, things that really do look very realistic but are much safer for the actors. We also have trapdoors. And we're going to watch a video of a trapdoor now, actually, to see what it looks like when someone goes through it. As you can see, it's actually really cool. And in that case, they did, that was a practice test, a safety check to check it works. But you can imagine that needs a lot of precision, doesn't it? The actors need to be in the same spot every time. They need to be ready so they don't accidentally scream if they're not supposed to. There needs to be safety people down below to make sure they don't get hurt when they fall. But this is an age-old technique. Even Shakespeare's plays had trapdoors when they were first performed. We've also got fog and smoke machines, which can be used really effectively, especially when you use lighting. I mean, look at the spotlight in that. It looks really powerful. And we've got rain on stage. Now, that is not some fancy lighting or a projection. In both of those images, that is actual water. For the classic play Singing in the Rain, which is infamous for its dancing scenes in the rain, despite the name being Singing in the Rain. Now, that looks incredible, but you can imagine the effort that had to go in beforehand to make sure that was done safely. And it's just incredible, the effects they can create on stage when they don't have things like CGI afterwards. They don't have computers that they can use afterwards to make things look better. It has to happen live on stage on the night. And that adds a big element of safety risks and foresight to predict what's going to happen. Now, what I want to know is who is in charge of this. Whose job is it to do that? And that is the special effects designer or artist. Well, what does that job actually mean? Because I can say that, but some of you might be watching this thinking, oh, I really want to do that job. But how do I do it? What skills do I need? Well, what do they do? Well, they create mechanical, optical, and computer-generated illusions for movies, television shows, and computer games. Now, I have forgotten to put the word theatre in there, which is obviously vital. My apologies. Required education? Well, a bachelor's degree is typical. A bachelor's degree is the name of the degree you get when you've gone to uni for 3 years. So a basic degree you need, and anything specific to the industry, if there's a computer program you need, if there's a certain safety knowledge you need. If you've got that and you've been trained in it, that's really helpful. Well, skills you need to be able to listen, especially to the director's vision and concepts. You need specific computer program knowledge, if that's what it's going to entail. You need to be creative, and you need to problem solve, which I'm going to talk about in a minute when I had to use these skills for this role. And you need to have the ability to work under pressure to meet deadlines. As well, here's the kicker, the ability to work long hours and not complain about it, which is much harder than it sounds. But in terms of salary, on average, they're getting £57,000 a year, which is a lot higher than most of your teachers are being paid. So it's a pretty good job if you can get into it. Right, next task. I want you to watch a specific video now where a man whose job it is, he's called Gregory Nia. He talks about the special effects that he has made. And he's worked on Broadway all across America. And he talks about things like fire, how to use guns safely, how to have people fly in, all these brilliant things that he's done. I want you to watch that, okay? And then once you've watched that, please come back to this video. Okay, I'm going to assume you watched that video, and I hope you enjoyed it. I particularly found it really fascinating when he was talking about guns, because I'm sure lots of you have done research about that, and I've been in theatres before and wondered, how are they allowed to do that? Or how are they allowed to actually have fire, or how are they smoking cigarettes on stage, and so much goes into it. It's quite amazing. Now, when I was in my third year of university, I did a unit called Technology in Theatre. And that meant that I became the stage manager. Now, the stage manager is in charge of everything you see on stage, but is not the acting. Okay, so they're in charge of the set, the lights, the sound, and they work with many people to make sure the director's vision becomes real. And I was unfortunate enough to work with a very demanding and challenging director, whose name I will not say. And she was putting on a play called The Yellow Wallpaper, which is a book where a woman is trapped in a room with yellow wallpaper. And it's a short book, only about 50 pages, and she slowly loses her mind, and she starts seeing people in the pattern of the wallpaper, and she thinks they're coming out of the wallpaper to kill her. So my director wanted to do this, and she had a very specific vision. She wanted a stage that would become more and more yellow as the character lost her mind. She wanted things and people to be able to climb out of the walls. And she wanted the set to start empty and get more and more full as the play went on. Now, this was a university play with a budget of £2,000, which sounds a lot, but it is not. And somehow, we had to do these things that seemed impossible. Well, we couldn't go on stage and paint the stage halfway through to make it more yellow. We couldn't build full-size walls with holes in for people to come out of, so we had to do a lot of problem solving and experimenting. And this took months of building things, realising it didn't work, scrapping our idea, going to the woman with an idea, her telling me, no, that's absolutely rubbish, I don't like it. But eventually we came down with the following idea. Before you see these images, I'm aware that it is horrifying and, to many people, very uncomfortable to look at. But given the plot of the play, that was what we were going for. So what we decided to do was make 12 large wooden frames. You can see them here. They were really high. And we covered them in different types of yellow wallpaper and fabrics that the actors could play around with. So some of them, like this one in the back, had wallpaper that we drew patterns on so it looked like people were moving. Some of them had large pieces of fabric where people could push their hands through the gaps. And then a couple of them had spaces for the actors to actually climb in and out of. And what happened is we brought on, or the actresses brought on, all of these in the play until by the end, the audiences were surrounded and trapped inside this yellow room, just like the woman in the play. One thing we also did was we painted the floor bright yellow. So the floor was yellow throughout and the benches. And then by the end, all of these walls were yellow as well. And it was really horrifying. Now, the challenge with this was that the actors were rehearsing in that space all day. They had 10 hours of rehearsals a day usually. So when were we going to be able to paint that floor? Well, we had to be there all day because we had to do measurements, we had to work on the lights, we had to sit down with the director. So what that meant is myself and my team had to stay behind at night and do all the big things like painting when they were gone. So I would go in at 8 o'clock and I wouldn't get home until 10 or midnight some nights. And if you want to do that job, that is something you have to be flexible with. But seeing something that you've made being watched by hundreds of people, there really isn't a feeling like it. And if that's something you want to do speak to me because I'd love to help people learn more about the technical side of theatre. Okay, so today there's only actually one task, it's just the quiz. I'm aware that not only have you watched me talk a lot, but you've seen 2 videos, so I don't want you to do a written task. I do want you to just do a quiz and check that you've learned some of these things about special effects. If you are uncertain about things, come back and watch the video. But good luck, have a lovely week, and I will speak to you all next week. Thank you.